This is National Native News. I'm Megan Kamrick in for Antonia Gonzalez. The South Dakota Senate passed a bill that directs state law enforcement to collect data on missing and murdered Indigenous people. A similar bill is scheduled for a vote on the House floor. Supporters say it's a step toward addressing crimes that often go unreported. South Dakota Public Broadcasting's Lee Strubinger reports.
Delphine, Tessa, Desiree, Darla, Mariah, Larissa, Anne.
Anita Lucchese reads a list of names that belong to missing Native women from South Dakota. Lucchese is Southern Cheyenne and the founder of the Sovereign Bodies Institute, which is a database cataloging cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women. She's worked on the database for 4 years. Lucchese says there are several barriers when gathering data on these cases. She says law enforcement sometimes doesn't log a victim's race and default to white.
It's really a struggle. And then even beyond accessing law enforcement data, there's quite a number of cases that never actually make it into that data because they're misclassified or unreported. So we really do data collection by any means necessary.
There are technicalities that are different between the two bills, and legislative leadership in the House say they hope to combine the language of the two bills. Democratic State Representative Puri Poirier is Oglala Lakota. She says a lot of work went into the bill.
I really appreciate the support that the committee has shown, that this issue is serious and that it is a legitimate concern and that we will move together on solving these type of life and death scenarios.
The bills direct the Department of Criminal Investigation, which falls under the Attorney General's office, to collect data and share information on missing and murdered Indigenous people with other law enforcement, tribal and non-tribal, as well as local and federal agencies.
They're asking you to decide that their names and their lives are worth counting. Now-ish. Thank you.
I'm Lee Strubinger in Pierre.
Canada's Indigenous Services Minister has spoken with the chief of a remote Northern Ontario First Nation to address a crisis in the community. As Dan Karpinchuk reports, that comes after the chief declared a state of emergency because of mold in about 75% of communities' homes.
The chief of the Cat Lake First Nation says black mold in most of the homes in his community has left some children with respiratory issues and skin rashes. At least one child had to be airlifted out of the community to receive emergency treatment. Chief Matthew Kiwakapo says some of the conditions people are suffering with, especially children, include bacterial diseases, rashes, and lung infections.
It's like when they play in their houses where the mold is like puts mold spores in the air, and that creates problems with their breathing and their skin. The most vulnerable are the children and the elders.
Kiwakapo says the situation began in about 2006, but became so bad recently that an emergency had to be declared. He says over the more than dozen years, there's been no help for Cat Lake. Opposition parliamentarians call the situation a national disgrace and say the government must deal with what's being described as a health crisis. Indigenous Services Minister Seamus O'Regan says Ottawa has been working on the problem, delivering materials for repairs and new construction, beginning repairs on priority homes, finding solutions for families that need alternate accommodation, supporting medical assessments and increasing nursing staff, as well as ensuring that the winter road is maintained and is accessible for people and materials for as long as possible. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpinchuk.
And I'm Megan Kamrick.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by the law offices of Sonosky, Chambers, Saxe, Miller, and Monkman, a national tribal rights law firm with offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska, and online at www.sonosky.com.
Support by PrairieEdge.com, where you can find a full selection of Pendleton products, traditional ledger art, beadwork, and quillwork, as well as a complete line of native books, music, and movies in Rapid City or online at PrairieEdge.com. Wopila.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.